We knew this truck would need some repairs when we bought it. After all, it has 292,000 miles and we only paid $1,500 for it. But in this video while we're working, we're going to talk a little bit about whether or not this truck has been worth the money. In some previous videos, we discovered that the brake booster is leaking down inside the cab. The power steering pump is leaking out here. And then off camera, I discovered the alternator isn't charging. And since we're pulling basically everything off the front, we're going to do a new belt and a new tensioner.
For a lot of people, the idea of getting a four-wheel drive crew cab dually with one of the most legendary diesel engines Ford ever made for the measly sum of $1,500 would be a dream come true. But if you don't know what you're doing when you get into vehicles like this, or if you're not really familiar with them, they can turn around and they can bite you very, very quickly. Now, I have been trading stuff and doing mechanic work since I was in high school, and I've been a professional mechanic all of my adult life. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's like Chucky said the other day, you can't assume anything when you are dealing with old vehicles or older equipment. The vast majority of people will be honest with you to the best of their ability, but the thing is, a lot of people don't really know everything that you would like to know about a piece of equipment or a vehicle, you know? When you drive something day in, day out, you get used to parts wearing and you don't notice them as starkly as, say, you get out of a brand new car, jump in something with 100,000 miles, you're going to, the steering's a little loose, the power windows might be a little slow, you might hear an extra little squeak or rattle or something that the person that drives that every day just got used to because they drive it every day and it happened so gradually they didn't really pick up on it. And then there could just be problems lurking under the surface that they don't have any way of knowing about, that when you get in there and start inspecting, you might find an oil pan gasket leaking, but it's not leaking enough to drip on the ground, so they don't see a puddle, so they don't know it's a problem. Stuff like that happens a lot more than people realize, and that's why you have to be very, very careful and assume almost worst case scenario every single time you purchase something. Now, when I bought this truck, I knew obviously it would need repairs, but there have also been quite a few little surprises, a lot of which you guys have seen right here on camera. We discovered the leaking brake booster together while we were fixing the transmission shift linkage, and we discovered the damaged lug studs and destroyed wheels when we were just trying to replace the tires that I knew needed to be replaced. Oh, and the brakes. And the alternator not charging. Didn't know about those things until we started getting into it. But that's something I kind of accounted for, and the purchase price on this truck was low enough that I felt like I could make any necessary repairs and still come out okay. Or if not, my worst case scenario was I actually think I could have parted this thing out and at the very least broke even, if not made a little money over what I paid for it. Even though my plan is to keep this truck, I don't plan to resell it, I'm not going to try to make any money on it, I still don't want to go spending 2 or 3 times the amount of money in parts that it would cost to go buy this thing already running and driving. Let's get into what this thing is actually cost. Now, we paid $1,500 for the truck, not running with 4 tires out of 6. Got to make that point. It is supposed to have 6 wheels on it. As soon as we got it home, I had to go buy a pair of batteries for it because they were missing. And I did a complete fluid change and service on the engine because I didn't want a potentially plugged fuel filter to cause any kind of starting or running issues. And I didn't want to try to start this thing until I knew for sure what the condition of the oil in it was. Because oil, not only is it critical on every engine, but it's especially critical on these Power Strokes due to that Huey injector design where it uses oil to fire the injectors. So just getting our batteries and our service done was about $530. That money got us to the point that the truck would actually turn over, but it wouldn't start. Now, we had to do a little more troubleshooting and discovered that the ICP sensor, the injector control pressure sensor, had failed. Our new ICP sensor was about $180, but that did get the truck running, and we were able to figure out that it had a coolant leak from the thermostat housing. Now, I could have saved a little money on this one. The radiator hoses were not leaking at the time, and I could have purchased a factory thermostat housing for about $15 or $20 instead of the machined aluminum one that I did purchase for about $50. The reason I did that, though, is because I do intend to keep this truck, and I wanted to go with the most reliable fix I could go with because in the long term, it's going to pay off. With our cooling system leaks fixed, we discovered more problems. And this is getting into the area that a lot of people start to feel overwhelmed on projects like this because you just have this seemingly major victory. You get it running, and then here's all this other stuff. And that's why you have to go into these things not only in the right financial position, but with the right attitude. You just kind of have to expect the unexpected and account for that. And that's why when we had to replace pretty much all of the rotating assemblies on the front of this engine, we did a power steering pump, an alternator, a belt tensioner, a belt, and a leaking brake booster. It wasn't a huge deal because we had already kind of accounted for those things. Total, that would add up to be $410. And then when we bought the truck, everybody could see really easily the rear window was made of duct tape. That's one of those deals where I had a whole lot more time investment than financial. I spent more time scraping and removing dried duct tape adhesive off the back of the cab than I did any other part of that job. We got fortunate on that one. I was able to find a good rear window in a junkyard for $37. There are some on Amazon and eBay for about $100, $150, but I found one locally, so that was a nice little win. While I was waiting on our rotating engine parts to come in, I decided I would install 4 good used tires that I already had on some of the 6 rims that they had sent with the truck. Even though it only had 4 tires on it, they did have the other 2 rims. The other 2 rims had been on the front, and they took them off, took the tires off. Then when they got ready to sell the truck, they put the outer rear duals on the front axle just so the truck would roll. I was removing the lug nuts to replace the tires and fix one stud that I knew was broken when I discovered this truck has been run with some very loose lug nuts for a very long time. Long enough to wear the lug studs down almost in half and completely destroy all the lug mounting holes in the wheels. Unfortunately, the front driver's wheel, what's currently now the front driver's wheel, used to be the left rear, and the front passenger wheel used to be the right rear. So out of the 6 rims that came with the truck, 4 of them have been ran with loose lug nuts and are damaged beyond usability. Of course, finding all this would allow me to discover that the rear brakes were also completely worn out, and the parts to fix all of that stuff would end up being about another $100. At this point, 2 big things happen. One, we have all the parts that should be required to give us a running, driving, functional truck. We know it moves, we know it stops, we know it starts. Everything looks like it should be in pretty good shape once this round of repairs is completed with the parts we already have. This is also the point where we can say we have officially spent as much money on parts as we did to purchase the truck. Using my rough numbers, we're at $1,457 worth of parts that we've bought for this thing, and I'm sure there's a margin of error in there that accounts for enough to make it an even $1,500. If there's not a margin of error, don't worry, because we're still missing 2 critical components, wheels and tires. Now, I have looked at a lot of different options for wheels and tires on this truck. I knew it was going to need tires for sure at the time of purchase. I wasn't as sure about wheels, but I thought it might. Because in the initial photos, it was missing 2 of them. It wasn't until I actually showed up to get it that I learned the missing 2 were in the bed. I was able to find some good used steel wheels locally. You guys are going to see those here in just a minute. These were actually fairly difficult to locate because they were only used from 99 through 04 and only on the F350 dually. Year models outside of that range had different lug patterns, and in that year range, the only other trucks with dual rear wheels, the 450s and 550s, had 10 lug wheels as compared to this one's 8 lug wheels. But I was able to find a set of 6 steel wheels here semi-locally. The gentleman wanted $60 a piece for them. I bought all 6. So now I have 6 wheels for another $360. And with that, we've spent $1,817 on parts for a $1,500 truck. But we're not done yet because we still need tires to go on those wheels. I have 4 good used tires, but this truck takes 6, as we've covered a couple of times now. So I am not entirely sure what I'm going to do. I may, if I can find a couple of good used tires in the matching size, I may throw those on the front. If I can't, I may throw 2 new tires on the front. And then again, I'm kicking around just throwing a full set of 6 on this thing and holding on to my 4 good used tires to put either as a full replacement set on the F250 when it needs it.
So I've run into a little hiccup. Let me show you what it is. There's actually 2 hiccups. One of them is right here. This is the line that comes out of the power steering pump right there. The new pump came with a brand new Teflon seal for that line. I don't know what the exact temperature is out here, but it's really cold. It is single digits Fahrenheit. I was trying to stretch a Teflon seal on in that kind of cold and the seal broke. So I got to pick up a new one of those. So issue number 2 is really nobody's fault but my own. So is issue number 1, but this is a little different. If we come down here, this is the tool we use to remove that pulley. You tighten it up against there. There's a little collar that grabs around here and grabs on the pulley and it pulls it off. To reinstall the pulley, there's a little threaded adapter that threads into the end of this and it threads into the end of that shaft, and that holds this threaded portion to the shaft so you can turn the nut and it pushes that pulley back on. The adapter I need, I actually broke doing this job, this exact job, a power steering pump, on my 2001 F350 with a 7.3. And since that was the last time I needed this kit, hi Heidi, I kind of forgot about it. So I gotta get some stuff. I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do about that. I'll probably make another little adapter piece. It seems fairly straightforward. Fortunately, this one's the same size on both ends, so I can just get a bolt and cut the threads off. So I've got to get that done yet. We have our new Hydro Boost in. We have new wheels. Instagram followers, you guys saw a post a day or 2 ago where we were actually going to get these, and I picked them up and brought them back. I'm sorry it's dark. There's Wimpy the Wonder Truck, for those of you that are asking about the Ram. But there's 2 wheels. There's a forklift. There's the other 4 wheels again. Sorry, I know it's dark, but we have wheels now. So that issue has been resolved. I've got 4 good used tires in the bed of the pickup. Those are probably going to go on our rear. I've got to decide what to do yet about tires for the front, because these that are on here are done. But so far, everything we've touched on this truck is done. I hope you guys are enjoying the build. I know I am. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't, and more later.